So where should we start?
Well, hey Kieran, how about you just tell me about your journey to here, how your coming out story, so to speak.
So I think I first realised I was transgender when I was about 13, but I really started coming out and sort of working through that when I was about 15, 16. And I went to a Catholic high school, which was not the funnest. But the big thing was when I was, working through it, all this sort of stuff, I realised very early on I didn't want to wear dresses. They made me uncomfortable. I hadn't worn them outside of school since I was about, 8, 9. And there was, as I started coming out and started telling people I think I'm trans, I told my school. And then I went and bought a boy's uniform from an op shop. And I went there every single day and everyone noticed. And I got this letter from the admin saying, actually, you're not allowed to do that. I went, no, I'm not staying here any longer. And I dropped out in halfway through year 11, and I worked for a bit, and then I moved schools where I could, truly be myself. And I feel so much better now, but that's something that really, for me, was sort of a turning point, realizing that, being who I was. Yeah, that's, I think, the biggest part of my coming out story. There's all sorts of other things, but that's the big one.
Okay.
And you, what about you? Could you tell me about your coming out story?
Well, I knew at a very early age. However, being brought up as the first grandchild, male grandchild, in a very strict Irish Catholic background, there was a lot of expectation being the firstborn of a family. So even though I had inklings or a thought, I just thought I just have to, if I deny it, then it won't ever be true. I married a woman and I was married for a few years. But yeah, still was just almost selling myself out to make everyone else in my life happy. And it wasn't until I went overseas for a year and I taught in Japan that I almost had the sense of this is where I could be brave, that I could actually experiment, I could actually try what I thought was right, but I'm so far removed from any of the people in my life who I could potentially hurt that it was safe to do this. So I had my first gay experience when I was 30, and it was like, this is what my life is supposed to be like. This is, it was almost that for that first time I actually felt whole. That was really good, but then I had to come back home, and the Craig that came back after 12 months away was a very, very different one. And I remember sitting my parents down, and my dad's very much a Ocker 3 meat veg truck driver Aussie guy, and I sat them down and I said, look, for nearly 31 years now I've lived my life making everyone else happy, and all I've realised is that I'm really unhappy and I can't do that anymore, so you need to know that I'm gay. Let my sister know, my younger sister know, and then Dad swore us all to secrecy that it couldn't be spoken outside of the family. And it was like that for a few years, but my folks have come a long way now, so yeah.
Well, much like you, my family is Irish Catholic too, but so I'm the second youngest of 11, and so my dad's not very religious. He's a doctor, and he's actually quite, but culturally it was extremely important to him, and so I still feel to this day a bit of, not shame, but like sort of I was sort of culturally letting my family down. And so it's very weird because I'm not particularly religious. I'm a little bit spiritual. I do some tarot and I have crystals and all that sort of stuff, but I don't believe in anything. but culturally, I feel like I'll always be Catholic, and it's a very weird way to be, because I know that the church as a whole doesn't really like who I am.
Yeah, that just all resonates so well with me. Like you were saying, I realised that, but, you know, if I'm made in the image of him, then he should just love me anyway. And I've challenged other friends who are, you know, quite religious, and, you know, I've said to them, you know, we're supposed to be made in the image of God. Yeah. But in your church, I'm an abomination. So are you actually saying that God made a mistake, that he got it wrong with me? And when you ask them that, they really struggle to give you an answer. So,
talking about family, and how has your relationship with your family sort of changed?
When I first came out, Dad, as I said, just banned us from talking outside the family. And he never met my first partner, never came to our house. My partner wasn't even allowed to come to our house, even if Dad wasn't home. But, you know, nowadays, with my new partner, who I've been with now for 18 years, you know, he's actually older than my dad. Like my partner is a couple of years older than my parents, but they get on fabulously well. I get on real well with my dad. I actually joke and say, you know, he's like a good South Australian red. As he's got older, he's matured, and he's become a better person, a better sense of himself. So we get on really well now. What about with you and your siblings? Because you've got a number.
I do. It's very interesting that my siblings were probably the first to come around, but quite early on. And I gave this emotional letter to my parents. My mum was fine. My mum was like, "Yep, this is all chill. This is all good." And my dad was like, I can't understand this. This is illogical, basically, because he's a doctor, scientist. Everything is all about that. And I remember going to the gender clinic where they, approve you for hormones and they do all of this. And I took my dad there, and the clinical psychologist went and just did numbers, and he said, only this amount of people regret it. This number of people commit suicide if they don't transition. This, numbers, facts, studies. And my dad came out of it and it was like, oh, so if the numbers say it's right, well, I guess it's right. And, from that point on, it's been happy as Larry. It's very, very weird, because I couldn't appeal to an emotion to him. Yeah. And so I just had to have someone go, give these numbers to my father, please.
All right, Kieran, well, it's been great chatting.
Indeed it has.
Well done.